VNP. I will be your moderator this afternoon. Everyone's phone has been muted. If you have a question during the presentation today, please type it in the Q&A box on the right of your screen. I will read the questions at the end of the presentation, and the presenters will provide a response. The presentation is available with a disclaimer and will be provided to everyone that registered to join this webinar. This is a live recording. I would like to thank Mr. J. Dalrymple and Mr. Steve Ecker for this collaboration. We are grateful for your time today. Before we get started, I would like to introduce Mr. Conrad Washington, Director of the VA Center for Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships, who will provide today's welcoming remarks. Mr. Washington serves as the Director for the VA Center for Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships. He is retired from the United States Marine Corps with 20 years of active duty service with a combat tour in 2004 in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom II. Mr. Washington is a licensed minister actively serving in his faith. He received his bachelor's degree of divinity in pastoral studies from Moody Theological Seminary. He also holds a master's in business management and a bachelor's of science degree in education. Additionally, he is a graduate of VA's class of 2017 Virtual Expiring Leaders Program. I now give you Mr. Washington for opening remarks.
Thank you, Ms. True. I appreciate it very much, and I thank all of you for joining us today. We know that you have choices with the virtual world and virtual webinars, so we thank you for stopping by today. We have a treat for you today. Some old colleagues that we've been working with here in the VA for some time. We're excited to have Jay and Steve join us to share information about NCA Pre-Need and Burial Eligibility Program, which many people don't know about. So we're excited to have them again. So thank both of you for joining us as well. I will just echo a couple of things. Today is the first day of summer. We're here in Washington, D.C. It's raining, but it is the first day of summer. We also acknowledge this month as Pride Month. And as I mentioned a few weeks ago, a couple weeks ago, that this month is actual National Candy Month. So just have some candy under the doctor's discretion. With that being said, we hope you enjoyed today's webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Washington. At this time, I would like to introduce Mr. J. Dalrymple, Director of the National Cemetery Administration Scheduling Office, who will provide some opening remarks. Please read a summary of his bio to the left of the screen. Mr. Dalrymple has been the Director of the National Cemetery Scheduling Office and Deputy Director of Field Programs since October 13, 2019. He is responsible for all scheduling and eligibility activities, including pre-need determinations for veterans and family members. Mr. Dalrymple graduated in 2019 from the National Cemetery Administration Comprehensive Year-Long Cemetery Director Intern Program. He is an Air Force veteran. At this time, I give you Mr. J. Dalrymple for today's opening remarks.
Thank you, Trulesta. Truly appreciate it. And good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for the privilege to speak with you today. So as Trulesta said, my name is Jay Dalrymple. I'm with the VA's National Cemetery Administration as the Director of the National Cemetery Scheduling Office here in St. Louis. For those that may be unfamiliar with NCA, as part of the VA, the NCA operates 155 national cemeteries, 34 soldiers' lots, and monument sites in 42 states, to include Hawaii, Alaska, and also Puerto Rico. There are over 4 million Americans, including veterans of every war and conflict, buried in VA's national cemeteries. Veterans have earned these benefits through your service and sacrifice to our nation, and really truly appreciate everyone's service and sacrifice personally. For the scheduling office, it was established to support our veterans and their family members during one of the most difficult times in your lives. Almost all requests for burial in a national cemetery now come through the scheduling office. So we like to say we're the gateway to NCA. So today we wanted to provide you with information on a couple of very important topics. Number one, looking at what are the high-level eligibility requirements for burial in a national cemetery. And then number two, looking at pre-need burial program that NCA offers to veterans, service members, and their dependents prior to passing, so you can do some active planning with your family and have everything ready to go when your time of need arises. So we will also want to answer any questions you may have. Anything we can do to assist, please let us know. So without further ado, I'll turn this back to Trulesta, and we'll have Steve Ecker present it for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dalrymple, so much for your time today. We appreciate you. Now I would like to introduce our speaker for today, Mr. Steve Ecker. Mr. Ecker is the Assistant Director of the National Cemetery Scheduling Office since April 2020. In this position, Mr. Ecker is responsible for assisting the Director with all scheduling and eligibility activities for veterans and their families. Mr. Ecker is a Navy veteran. He is a member of the United States Navy Ceremonial Guard at Joint Base Anacostia Bowling, Washington, D.C. At this time, I give you Mr. Steve Ecker for today's presentation. The floor is yours, Steve. Thank you.
Thank you, Trulesta, and Mr. Washington, as always, very appreciative of the opportunity to speak and share this information with the group. So if we want to, first slide. So as Jay mentioned, we're going to touch on a few different topics today: general eligibility requirements, what's included in the burial benefit, and we have some frequently asked questions that may be helpful. Then kind of go into a high-level overview of the eligibility criteria and discuss the pre-need eligibility program and how to apply and some different things you can expect after you apply. Next slide. So let's start with the basics here. What's actually included in the burial benefit? Just as a preface here, it's important to notice the difference. NCA and VA, they handled the actual burial benefit, which means a burial in a national cemetery. Any monetary burial benefits, reimbursements, or any burial monetary awards, those are requested through the Veteran Benefits Administration. So for NCA, our burial benefit, it includes a gravesite in any of our national cemeteries. That is, if the cemetery has available space for casket and cremation burials. The VA provides a grave liner or a concrete vault that the casket is placed in, the opening and closing of the grave, and of course the perpetual care of that grave site. Government headstone marker or niche cover is also provided with the benefit, as well as a burial flag, presidential memorial certificate, which is given out at the cemetery, and military honors. Now, military honors aren't actually part of the burial benefit, but our office does assist the funeral homes and families with the information to schedule those once the service is scheduled at the National Cemetery. Next slide. So there are several portions that are family responsibility and not covered by the burial benefit. And those include costs associated with funeral home prep fees, costs pertaining to cremation services. So the VA does not cover funeral home cost or the cost of cremations or any kind of services provided by the funeral home or crematory. Cost for the purchase of a casket or an urn, transportation of any sort, and this includes transportation to the National Cemetery itself, or any cost associated with the funeral home. That is a thing that happens, but that is the family cost as well. Next slide. So we put together, we did a few iterations of this and captured some of the frequently asked questions from different groups. So we hope this will be helpful, but wanted to touch on a few of the most frequently asked questions. Can I be buried in any national cemetery? The answer is yes. Veterans and eligible dependents can be buried at any cemetery with available grave sites. And there are no geographical restrictions. So if someone's in California, wants to be placed in a cemetery in New York, as long as there's available space, that's perfectly fine. The next one, is the spouse required to be buried in the same national cemetery as the veteran? No, that's not the case. A veteran and a spouse can be interred in different national cemeteries. Benefit goes to the spouse. So say veterans buried in California and now the spouse is in Florida and family's closer to Florida, and it would be easier to see that person. The spouse can be buried in Florida. Will my spouse be buried next to me or with me in the same gravesite? So any non-veteran spouse of an eligible veteran are interred in the same gravesite. In the case where both spouses are veterans and determined eligible, there's an opportunity at that time to request an adjacent gravesite where the two would be placed next to each other. Does it matter if I'm cremated, casket or cremated? That does not matter. The only thing is it would depend on the availability at the national cemetery that they prefer. So if the cemetery closest by or the family preference only accepts, cremation burials, then they may not be able to accommodate a casket. But overall, the national cemeteries can accommodate both. Next slide. So some more questions. Is my wife listed on the headstone also? The answer, yes. The veteran information is on the front and the spouse information is on the back of the headstone. Can I get a headstone if I'm cremated? A headstone or marker is provided for all remains types. Are there costs to have my spouse buried? There are no costs. As I said, the burial benefit transfers from the veteran to the spouse. Families are responsible for, as I mentioned, any other expenses required before arriving at the national cemetery. So the best rule of thumb here is once the family drives through the cemetery, all additional costs and services are covered by the burial benefit. Can I request just a service and military honors if I'm not going to be interred in a national cemetery? Yes, we see that a lot. That's referred to as a memorial service, where families are allotted time for a service. They can still have military honors at the shelter, but there is actually no interment. Say for cremated remains, family wants to bring the urn, just have military honors and a service. The family can choose to inter at a later date. That's perfectly fine. What is the difference between in-ground cremation burial and being placed in a columbarium or wall? Just as it kind of says, in-ground cremation burial is like a traditional casket burial, where it is placed in a gravesite, and a columbarium or mausoleum, as some people may know them as, that's where the urn is placed in a niche above the ground. Next slide. So this slide kind of shows an example of a standard government headstone. So it kind of shows you the different information that's provided: person's legal name, branch of service, beginning, the date of death and date of birth, and the section and grave number. There is an option that the cemetery covers when they fill out the headstone request, where families have options to put additional inscriptions, possibly an emblem of belief, but all that's covered with the cemetery and all based on family preference. And as I said, there are opportunities to put additional inscriptions, but the cemetery covers all of that with the families the day of the service. Next slide. So let's talk about high level who's eligible for the burial benefit and to be interred in a VA national cemetery. Veterans, service members, spouses, and dependents may be eligible for burial. but one of the following must be true for the person to qualify for the burial benefit. And those are a veteran who didn't receive a dishonorable discharge, a service member who died on active duty for training, or inactive duty for training. A spouse or a minor child of a veteran is also eligible. It's even if the veteran predeceases. And in some cases, unmarried adult children can be eligible. Those are children that have, mentally or physically incapable of self-support. Those require a little more verification and documents, but in a lot of cases, if criteria are met, those unmarried adult children can be placed with the veteran. Next slide. So the NCA and VA, we define a veteran as a person who served in any active military, naval, or air service branch and who was discharged under conditions other than dishonorable. That's the way the law reads, but generally we require an honorable discharge under the honorable discharge. So that's the reason that constitutes under conditions other than dishonorable. Slide. So let's look at some common categories of persons eligible. So let's look first at veterans with 1 or more days of active service. So the important takeaway from this slide is for enlisted members who enlisted on or before September 7th of 1980. All you technically need is one or more days of active honorable service. And for officers who enlisted on or before October 16th of 81, the same stands. You would only need technically 1 day of active duty and discharge under conditions other than dishonorable. Next slide. So now this slide talks about the 24-month requirement. So any enlisted person who enlisted after September 7th of 1980 or officers after October 16th of 81, there's a new requirement that the service member must have served the 24-month minimum active service requirement. So, and of course, who was discharged under conditions other than dishonorable. So again, the important takeaways is before September 7, 1980, there is no 24-month requirement, but anyone who enlisted on or after those dates had to have served a minimum of 2 years. Next slide. Some other common persons eligible categories is any service member who is receiving a pension or compensation. So any service-connected veterans, any veterans receiving, pension, whether that's, and that goes from 0% to 100% service-connected. So that's important to remember as you're talking to the families or for yourselves on the call who may be veterans. At any point in time, you become 0% or more service-connected, you would be eligible for the burial benefit. Next slide. Some additional categories: spouses or unmarried surviving spouses. So a spouse of an unmarried survivor of a veteran, they're eligible. So for remarried surviving spouses, deaths that occur before January 1st of 2000, the remarriage to a non-veteran must have been terminated by divorce or the death of the non-veteran. So to wrap this up a little easier, if a veteran passes away and the spouse is married to them at their time of death, the spouse can remarry and still be eligible under the first spouse's burial benefit and be placed with their first spouse. Next slide. So let's change gears a little bit and talk about common reasons for denial or people, service members that may not qualify. So I'm not going to go over all of them, but you can kind of see the different categories. And we call these denial reasons. I will say, though, that here at NCA, we pride ourselves on being a little different than other VA agencies where we do a lot of the legwork for the families, and we will do whatever we can to get the necessary information required to make them eligible. We want to get to yes here. But unfortunately, we have to go by federal law and we can't approve everyone. But some of the categories are DVA. So that means that the service member's service was considered dishonorable for VA purposes. And that's through adjudication through a regional office. Active duty for training is one of the most common. That kind of touches on reservists and National Guards service members who may have served, their 6 or 8 years in the Guard or Reserve, but never actually called to active duty rather than training. So the big thing here is if you're one of those people and unsure, generally the rule of thumb is if you're called up under Title 32 orders, those aren't considered federal orders. What we're looking for is call-ups under Title 10 that would constitute federal call-up and qualifying active duty. Less than 24 months. So as we talked about, the 24-month requirement after September 7th, 1980. So any service member who did not meet that 2-year requirement, they would not be eligible. And then reserve or guard time. Again, reserve or guards service members who did not get called to active duty. Next slide. Okay, so we're going to change gears here a little bit again, and let's talk about the pre-need eligibility program. So this allows veterans and family members to apply in advance of need. So we're a call center, and generally we're taking time of need calls from families and funeral homes where a death has occurred. But we are able now to provide that service before the time of need, and this is called a pre-need determination. This helps the burial planning process, making it easier, taking some of the burden off the family at their time of need. So important note here is, of course, pre-need means before the time of need. And this helps, planning in advance. So if you are requesting a burial time of need, you wouldn't go through the pre-need program. You would contact our office and we would process as a time of need burial request. Slide. So some details of the pre-need program. It's for request in VA national cemeteries only, and it does not actually insure you any space in a particular cemetery, and it's not a reservation. So on the form, as we go through the form, you'll see that there is a field for the preferred national cemetery. That's generally there just for us to kind of do tracking, to kind of see utilization rates of the different cemeteries. But if for some reason, by the time the service member passes away, the cemetery they were wanting to go to is full, they would have to look at another cemetery in their area. Again, approval status may change, and additional verification will be done at the time of need. So the pre-need program, we do offer a determination at the time of the letter, but we will go back just to verify at the time of need to make sure no circumstances have changed. Important part of the pre-need program, just like any VA initiative, we want to make sure we're reaching the right audience. So these are service members who may have questions about their service, the reserve and the guard service members, people who aren't sure if they have active duty or if they don't have enough service, or was my call up, was it considered Title 10 and qualifying active service? Reservists who are unsure, any general questions. Unmarried adult children, like I said, if veteran or service member family has someone who they do care for that may meet the conditions of an unmarried adult child, we want to get those requests in so we can get the necessary medical documentation from the family and the provider to see if they meet the criteria. That takes a little more legwork, so we want to do that work up front. And the veterans and family members with any questions regarding their specific eligibility and any kind of questions surviving or remarried spouses may have of previously interred veterans. Next slide. So what information do I need to apply? Just like most VA benefits or any kind of benefit, there is certain information that required, and of course it's the standard PII stuff, the Social Security number, date and place of birth, Any kind of military information you can provide, discharge dates, enlistment dates, any rank, character of service, and most importantly, the discharge documents. So we always say err on the side of caution. Generally, after the late 60s, the DD 214 was the main discharge document produced by all branches. But prior to then, there are hundreds of different documents. But we always say the more documents, the better. So if you have discharge documents, submit them with your request. Next slide. So this slide here shows the VA form, and it's the VA form 40-10,007. So let's talk about kind of navigate this form and how would you go about filling it out. Again, as I mentioned, you want to choose the VA National Cemetery where you would prefer to be buried. But again, this does not, guarantee you a reservation or spot in that cemetery. And also important to note, this application does not apply to Arlington National Cemetery. VA does not administer Arlington. That's ran by the Department of the Army. They have their own process for applying and seeking eligibility. Next, you want to gather your supporting documents, all the information we just covered. Again, any discharge documents available. And it's important that for each person that applies as the claimant, they require a separate form. And each form should be signed by each individual claimant who's submitting the form for that pre-need determination. On these forms, the veteran information will remain the same unless both spouses are veterans, but the claimant information will be that specific person requesting that eligibility determination. Slide. So we kind of drill down here further into section 1. As I said, this is the veteran information. So if, say, the veteran is also the claimant, the veteran will put their service information in section 1, and then they'll also be the claimant in section 2. But this is the general information we discussed previously with some additional fields. And in box 15, that's where you would put as much detailed information you have regarding the military service. Slide. Now, section 2 is the claimant information. So as I said, if the veteran is the claimant, this information will be the same. You'll notice in the box 24, it has check boxes to identify the relationship. So if, for instance, this was for a spouse, say their husband was the veteran, the veteran's information would be in section 1, and this would be the spouse's information. And you can see if the request is for an unmarried adult child or the surviving spouse or other, that's where that's identified. Next slide. Section 3 is just the signature section. So again, this portion needs to be signed by the claimant. So again, if the veteran is different from the claimant, this section needs to be signed by the actual claimant. And box 34, you're able to identify as the person signing this self or an individual signing for a claimant. That's relevant if the person may be under 18 years of age, maybe mentally incompetent, or someone who may have power of attorney or guardianship. That's where you would identify that. Slide. So how do you apply for the burial benefit? Like most benefits with the VA, the preferred method is online, and that's also the quickest method. That gets us the information immediately, and it is able to feed automated into our management systems. But we do have a paper application available. You can download that from the VA website that will be provided on the slide deck. Or you can also you can fax or email that form into us. Again, for faster processing, for online, but provide any supporting documentation that you may have with the application. Next slide. So what happens after I apply? So our goal is to complete your application with 120 days of receipt. I can tell you right now, we're significantly below that. So we're pleased to announce that. We will send you information via the postal service once your application has been reviewed and a determination is made. So if you're eligible, you'll receive correspondence with your approval letter and some additional inserts. If we need additional information or don't have enough information, we'll send correspondence saying, hey, we may need some additional information from you. Please, and we'll kind of outline what we need additionally provided. And if the person doesn't qualify, we send the family or person a denial letter along with their rights to a higher level review or any other actions that may need to be taken. For any updates on your application or any questions, we're available. The pre-need staff are available Monday through Friday, 8 to 5:30 Eastern time. We're happy to take your call, answer any questions you may have about your eligibility, on how to fill out or submit the form. We're happy to answer any questions. One important thing is please wait to hear back about your application rather than resubmitting. What we found is if numerous requests are submitted, that can kind of slow up the process and cause confusion on our end. So we ask you to be patient and know that, our goal is to receive a response within 120 days. And we're well exceeding that right now as far as timeliness. So we're getting them back much sooner. So we just appreciate and ask for your patience. And if you have any questions or want to check the status, feel free to call our number. Additional information can be found at the web link below. That's regarding memorials and pre-need eligibility or just general eligibility or any information pertaining to burial and memorial benefits. Next slide. All right, that's all I had for you today. Thank you again for your time. I hope this information was valuable and have some questions if we have some. Thanks again.
Thank you so much, Steve, for the excellent presentation. Always informative, as always. We are going to start addressing some of the questions in the Q&A box right now for the folks that are on the phone. I will read the questions out loud and we'll ask you to provide a response. Also, if we are unable to get around to all of your questions today, we will take down those questions, provide them to Mr. Dalrymple and Mr. Ecker, and they will get a response directly back to you within a couple of days. We do have your email address and your point of contact information, so we can provide you that information. Okay, let's get around. We only have actually one question, Steve, today from Delirious Montana. I know I messed it up, so I apologize for that. He says, my dad and I are both veterans, so we need two separate VA 40-10,007 form and another one for my mom. Is that correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Go ahead, Jay.
That is correct.
Okay, great.
So each applicant, so both veterans, if you're choosing to submit a pre-need application, each veteran, as well as any spouse, will be required to submit their own separate forms. So you could send the father and the mothers together if you'd like, because that way we'll have both forms with the father's discharge information that we would apply for your mom as well.
Okay, thank you so much, Jay, for that. We are getting some more questions in. Our next question is from Mr. Anthony Coleman. And his question is, can you use your award letter with all of the information on it?
Steve, you want to take that one?
Yeah, so I'm not sure if you are referring to like a campaign award or like your VA, maybe your service connected award letter. But I guess the answer is yes. I mean, we would still require the pre-need form, but if you wanted to provide that letter to us, chances are, if you are receiving service connected compensation, you're in VA systems. So we would be able to hopefully get your discharge documents from VA systems, or at least verify that you are receiving compensation. And if needed, we could go out and request your military discharge. But yes, that information would be sufficient for us to either verify, your eligibility through receiving service-connected compensation, or, we could obtain your military discharge documents, which should be available in VA systems.
Okay, thank you so much, Steve. Next question is coming from Darrell Brown. Is there space in the Punch Bowl Cemetery?
So that's always a challenge. So the Punch Bowl is the National Memorial Cemetery of the Pacific in Hawaii. And there is space for cremains in a columbarium wall. But every once in a while, they are going back and actually disinterring and doing genetic testing to see if they can identify some of the unknowns. So every once in a while, there is available space for a casket, but they're very far and few between. But the Punch Bowl Cemetery in Hawaii does have space above ground in a columbarium wall for cremains.
Okay, thank you, Jay. And thanks for answering, saying where the Punch Bowl Cemetery is in Hawaii, because I didn't know that. Next question, Cheryl Phantom. My cremation niche and plate have already been paid for. Can reimbursement be applied for? Is she applied for reimbursement?
So for that one, the assumption is this is in a put together for a private cemetery. So depending on what your final decisions are, that would be a question to go to the VA's benefit administration, because they do all of the reimbursements. If you come to a national cemetery, we would inscribe a new niche for your gravesite. So that one would have to go to VBA, which their number is the 800-827-1000 or 927-1000 number, to see if there's reimbursement available for it.
Okay, next question from Chris Machado. If I understand this right, VA does not provide care for a veteran's gravesite if buried outside cemetery. If buried outside, I'm assuming he means if buried outside of a VA cemetery.
That is correct. So NCA provides perpetual care for all the grave sites within the VA's national cemeteries. It is ultimately, if it's a private cemetery, that is cared for by that cemetery itself.
Okay, thank you so much. Mr. Darrell Brown is asking another question regarding the Punch Bowl Cemetery. I believe he says, could the cremation remains be relocated to ground burial once space opens up at the National Cemetery of the Pacific?
It could, the preference is when we enter in a national cemetery, we prefer not to relocate them or disinter and reinter once it's completed. But there are unusual circumstances that could occur where, say, you have a spouse that's going in and they have space for a casket and you want to be together, the cemetery would have to work that out.
Okay, thank you so much, Jay. Next question is coming from Bonithia Van. She said, I sent my VA form 1007 form to Forest Garrison and was informed that I could not reserve a space. However, they will keep my letter on file, and when I die, if space is available, they would accommodate. I believe Maryland law buries veterans based on their residency. I live in Upper Marlboro, Maryland. However, my home of record is Baltimore, Maryland. I prefer to be buried near Baltimore. What are my options?
So this one, I'm assuming that's Fort Garrison, which is a veteran cemetery. So the VA provides cemetery grants for state veteran cemeteries as well. They are not included in the pre-need applications. So that's why they're probably going to keep it on file. It the burial laws for veterans based on residency is around state or private cemeteries. It doesn't apply to nationals because you can be buried in any national cemetery you prefer. And as a matter of fact, we do have a Baltimore National Cemetery there as well. So we're always going to tell you go to an NCA cemetery, and Baltimore National would be the best option from a national cemetery perspective.
Thank you, Jay, for that. Next question is coming from Miss Beverly Thompson, and this is a fairly easy one. If you are 100% service-connected veteran, what would the VA cover if buried in National Cemetery?
So whether you're 100% service connected or not, excuse me, if you're being buried in a national cemetery, we take care of everything again, as Steve talked about before. Well, once you arrive at the gates of the National Cemetery, everything from inside the gates is cared for. So your gravesite, your headstone, your vault, and perpetual care of the grounds. So it doesn't matter whether you're 0% service connected or 100% service connected. We cover every veteran buried in a national cemetery the same.
Thank you, Jay. And I think this is the last question from Chris Machado again. Does VA help pay to reserve a spot at an outside cemetery?
So not necessarily reserving a spot. This is again is a Veterans Benefits Administration question. In that there are plot allowances that you can apply for benefits on, and again that is a VBA service provided to our veterans who get interred in a private cemetery.
Okay, thank you. And we did get another question typed in from Mr. Edward Martin. He wants to know if a veteran passed before his spouse, but the family cannot find any information at the time of burial or death of a spouse, but later do get a reimbursement of costs and or marker be presented at a later date. He says the veteran was a World War II Korean War veteran. Record on the veteran's status is unclear due to lack of family information such as date of birth and date of death. So if the veteran passed before his spouse and the family cannot find any information at the time of burial or death of a spouse, but later do, can a reimbursement of costs and the market be presented at a later date?
Yeah.
So go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, so I'm assuming that the veteran was placed in a private cemetery. So if at any time military documents are made available that do, that do allow us to determine that they do have qualifying service, a VA headstone or marker can be requested at that time for the private cemetery. Or if, the family purchased a headstone, again, that could go through the Veteran Benefits Administration to see if there's any benefit as far as recouping some of the costs. But yeah, to answer the question, if family comes up with military documents and we're able to verify qualifying service, they can request a government headstone.
All right, and I lied. There is another question here from Delirious Montanez. Do you know if Fort Bliss accepts cremations and casket burials?
Yes, at this time, I do believe they take both.
Yeah, I have the regs up. They do, Jay.
Okay, I was just pulling those up myself.
Yep.
So yes, they do accept both at this time. Now, things can change depending on availability, but always want to look at that first.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jay and Steve, for everything today and all of your support and answering all the questions. We appreciate you. For our audience, if you need to reach out to any of the presenters, see their point of contact on the screen here. You can also reach out to our team for any information for our point of contact as well. It'll be on the screen later. At this time, I'm going to turn the mic back over to Mr. Washington for closing remarks.
Hey, thanks, Troy. I think we have one additional question there, if I saw that correctly.
Okay.
Did we ask that question?
It just came in. Another question from Ms. Bennett. Is there a time limit for when a veteran can be assigned a vault at a VA cemetery? My husband was cremated, but his ashes were not placed in the VA cemetery at his death. It's been 3 years since he passed away. Is it too late to request for him to be placed in a vault?
The answer is no, there is no time limit. So if you have your husband's cremains and want to place them in a VA national cemetery, we would be absolutely more than honored to take it.
Okay, there you go, Ms. Bennett. So the answer is yes. I don't see any more questions at this point. If you do have additional questions, please forward them to us and we'll be glad to answer any additional questions that you may have at this time. I'm going to turn the mic over to Mr. Washington for closing remarks.
All right. Hey, thanks, Troy. I appreciate it. Hey, thanks, Steve. We appreciate you and Jay for doing what you do. We know we can tell by the number of questions that we had that people are interested. And if you're an attendee today, please share the information that you received today. It will be on our website shortly as well. Pass the word. We want to make sure that the word is disseminated appropriately across the nation. And also, I will invite you to join us next Tuesday when we have another webinar on suicide prevention. So until then, thank you all and be blessed.
If you register for this event, we will provide you with the presentation with a disclaimer. A recording of this webinar and the transcript will be provided on our website at a later date. Please subscribe to our website and Facebook for future webinars and information. At this time, we adjourn today's webinar. Thank you for joining us today. Have a safe and wonderful day. Thank you.